welcome to the debate. When you put a commercial jet on autopilot, there is an implicit trust that the system will alert you before it flies into a mountain.
Right.
You expect a loud, flashing warning on the dashboard, sirens, red lights, something. But imagine a scenario where the manufacturer decided to just, turn off that specific alarm.
Yeah, they just disable it.
Exactly. They leave the autopilot fully engaged, the plane drifts right toward the edge of a cliff, and the system just stays dead silent.
I mean, that assumes the pilot isn't supposed to be looking out the window, right? If you are flying blind, relying entirely on a convenience feature that was never designed to be your primary navigation tool, you can't blame the autopilot when you crash into the mountain. You blame the pilot who stopped flying the plane.
And that fundamental tension is exactly what we are tearing into today. We are looking at the systemic risk of trusting vendor-provided billing convenience.
Which is a massive issue right now.
It really is. Specifically, we are dissecting two massive, fast-approaching cloud billing cliffs. So we've got GitHub Copilot's token overhaul and Azure's reserved virtual machine retirements.
Two very expensive cliffs.
Right. And the central disagreement here is intent versus accountability. My stance is that vendors like Microsoft and GitHub are deliberately weaponizing transparency tools and automated safety nets to drive massive, unbudgeted revenue. They are engineering cost traps.
And I take the opposite view. I mean, look, these are simply harsh, necessary economic corrections. They are exposing FinOps teams who have completely outsourced their financial governance to a vendor's checkbox.
I mean, we'll see about that.
Well, I look at the numbers, and the outrage from the industry feels entirely misplaced to me. The underlying economics of these platforms were completely broken. We are exiting the era of VC-subsidized flat rates. It is over.
It's definitely shifting, yeah.
When you look at the leaked internal data showing Copilot infrastructure costs literally doubling since January 2026, the reality sets in. A developer running a heavy, automated agentic session that burns 2 million tokens cannot realistically cost the vendor the same flat $19 a month.
Right, as a junior dev doing basic code completion.
Exactly. The flat rate was a market share acquisition strategy. Now the bill is coming due. And over on the Azure side, relying on an auto-renewed toggle for your server fleets is just a FinOps anti-pattern. Relying on vendor automation instead of proactively tracking the life cycles of your own infrastructure is, frankly, a dereliction of duty. Vendors are providing real escape routes, like build previews and savings plans. FinOps teams are just too lazy to use them.
I disagree completely on the intent. My position is that these changes are highly calculated, predatory bait and switches. They are designed to trap workflows that are already locked into the ecosystem. Look at the blatant conflict of interest here.
Where is the conflict?
GitHub spent the last 18 months incentivizing heavy agentic workflows under a flat rate pricing model. They went to every engineering leader and said, automate your entire sprint cycle with AI.
Sure, they promoted the tool.
But now that those workflows are deeply embedded in the daily pipeline, they are repricing them mid-flight. And worse, they are using a 90-day promotional credit injection as a literal financial sedative to intentionally mask the real September impact.
That's a strong word, sedative.
It is what it is. And Azure's approach is equally hostile, allowing an auto-renew feature to silently fail for widely deployed legacy virtual machines rather than sending a hard stop architectural warning. That is a deliberate financial strategy to harvest 100% on-demand price hikes overnight from uninformed customers.
Let's start with GitHub Copilot and this token trap concept. The entire industry right now is hyperventilating over the June 1st start date for the new token billing model, which is completely missing the actual structural shift. June 1st is just the warning shot.
Because the real disaster hits September 1st. June through August is the sedative phase. GitHub is temporarily boosting the AI credit allocation for the summer.
Right.
If you are a business subscriber, you get 3,000 credits per user. Enterprise gets 7,000. That is a massive 58 to 79% inflation over what the permanent base limits will actually be.
But they are providing a transition buffer. That's standard.
No, they're injecting credits into the system specifically so that when a FinOps director looks at their June, July, and August bills, everything is flashing green. The overages won't trigger.
So they don't get a massive bill immediately.
But what happens during those 3 months? Developers are going to build deep structural dependencies on these agentic tools all summer long because the AI feels free. Then, September 1st hits. The promo evaporates. The base drops back to 1,900 and 3,900 credits.
And then the billing normalizes.
Normalizes? Suddenly, organizations that budgeted $19 a seat are looking at actual monthly costs of $47 to $60 a seat. You are talking about a 150 to 215% retroactive price spike, hitting right at the end of Q3.
Calling it a sedative assumes malice, though. Promotional periods are a standard required transition mechanism when you migrate a massive global user base from a flat-rate model to pure consumption. Think about the operational shock if GitHub just flipped the switch to raw token billing on June 1st with zero buffer.
It would force people to change their behavior immediately.
It would literally halt development cycles globally. Teams need time to observe their own consumption patterns without being penalized immediately. The core issue isn't a trap. The core issue is that we need to define what an agentic workflow actually does to a back-end server.
Okay, walk us through that, because people hear agentic and they just think better autocomplete.
Right. Basic code completion is like asking the AI for the next word in a sentence. It's cheap, maybe a few hundred tokens. A simple chat might be 5,000 tokens, costing about 5 cents.
Very standard.
But an agentic workflow, that is telling the AI to read your entire repository, identify a bug across 12 different files, write the fix, format the pull request, and run the testing loops in the background. It is thinking and executing continuously.
Yeah, it's a massive compute cycle.
You cannot run a sustainable SaaS business absorbing $20 daily compute costs for a user who pays a $19 monthly subscription. The economics demanded a correction.
I hear the economic argument, I really do. But if this was purely about transparently correcting an unsustainable subsidy, why does the new model include hidden double billing?
You're bringing up the Copilot code review feature.
Yes, and we need to unpack how this actually works, because it's buried deep in the fine print of the April 27th announcement. Copilot code review is the only feature that consumes both AI credits and GitHub Actions minutes simultaneously.
Which makes architectural sense. You are paying for the brain and the body separately.
But they didn't prominently disclose that. Let's explain the mechanics. When you trigger an automated AI code review, the AI doesn't just float in the ether. It requires a physical container, a GitHub action, to spin up, pull down your repository, parse the code, format the review, and post it back to the pull request.
Right, that's just how the infrastructure works.
So GitHub is charging you tokens for the brain, the LLM inference, and simultaneously draining your actions compute minutes for the body. If you are a director of engineering running automated reviews on 500 pull requests a week, that dual billing isn't an economic correction. It is going to decimate your budget.
I wouldn't say decimate.
It is bad faith. They are weaponizing the complexity of their own backend architecture against the customer.
Look at the actual consumption data, rather than claiming bad faith. Let's look at the real-world case study from the GitHub community discussions that everyone is circulating. We have a user who pulled their April 2026 usage. Under the legacy flat-rate model, their compute costs GitHub roughly $39.
Okay.
When that exact same usage was run through the new AI credits preview tool, the cost came out to $902.
Which completely validates my point about the massive price hike. How does a CFO not fire someone over a jump from $39 to $900?
Because they've been artificially subsidized. That 23 times increase exposes the true cost of the compute for normal, professional developer work. It wasn't abuse, it was just heavy usage. The flat rate model was a fantasy. And this case study brings us to the most critical operational shift in this entire paradigm, model choice.
Yes.
It was just a matter of technical preference. Do I like OpenAI today or Anthropic? Under the new token billing, model choice is a strict binding budget policy.
Let's break down the math on that drop-down menu, because the multiplier is staggering, and there are zero guardrails.
Right. The consumption of an AI credit is strictly dependent on the underlying model you select. GPT-5 Mini and GPT 4.1 are included in the base tier, they have a 1x multiplier. But if a developer is working on a tough problem, casually opens that dropdown and switches to Anthropic Opus 4.7,
They aren't just changing the flavor of the AI.
exactly. Under the previous model, Opus was a 7.5x cost multiplier. Under the new token billing, Opus 4.7 is a 27x multiplier. OpenAI GPT 5.4 went from a 1x multiplier to a 6x multiplier.
And what happens when they click Opus? Does a massive red warning pop up on their screen?
Well, no, it just switches the model.
Exactly. There is no confirmation dialog that says, warning, you're about to increase the financial burn rate of this session by 27 times. By leaving that dropdown perfectly frictionless and fully accessible without robust default financial blocks, the vendor is actively facilitating the budget overrun.
They give you the transparency tools, though.
They can point to their bill preview dashboard and say, look, we gave you the data. But they know full well that most engineering teams aren't checking a billing dashboard daily. They are banking on the friction of governance to drive those overages.
But the governance tools exist today. Enterprise, organization, cost center, and user-level budget controls are right there in the admin panel. You cannot demand that a vendor babysit your developers. You have to take responsibility for your own environment.
Which means there is a very concrete action every FinOps team must execute right now, today. You must lock your default model policies immediately. Hard code the default to GPT 4.1 or GPT-5 Mini for all standard workflows.
Absolutely.
If a senior developer needs Opus 4.7 for a complex reasoning task, it must be an explicit, ticketed request for a specific use case. And critically, you have to explicitly model your September costs right now. Pull your raw token consumption data in late August, but price it against the permanent 1,900 or 3,900 limits. Completely ignore the inflated summer promo numbers in your projections. Do not let the sedative work.
I agree on the action, but that reliance on a false sense of security, on UI elements and promotional buffers, is the exact same dynamic playing out on the infrastructure side. We move from GitHub's drop-down menus to Azure's toggles, but the fundamental danger of trusting vendor-provided convenience tools remains identical. Azure's auto-renew feature for virtual machine reservations isn't just a convenience. Right now, it is a ticking time bomb.
A bomb that detonates on July 1st, 2026. Let's set the stage here. Microsoft is ending new purchases and renewals of reserved virtual machine instances for 18 legacy VM families. We're talking about the workhorses, the DV3, the EV3, the DSV3.
Just to clarify for everyone listening, these aren't obscure, specialized chips. These are the servers sitting in the background doing the heavy, unglamorous data lifting for the last 5 years. They are the backbone of massive enterprise architectures.
Exactly. And the official line from Microsoft is simple. Migrate your workloads to the newer DV5 or EV5 families before your current reservation expires. On paper, that is standard hardware lifecycle management. But the hidden catastrophe here is the silent auto-renew failure.
The silent failure.
Let's break down the mechanics of how a FinOps team actually operates. For years, Microsoft told practitioners to enable auto-renew on their reserved instances. It removes the cognitive burden of tracking expiration dates on hundreds of servers. You toggle it on, you walk away, and you seamlessly keep your 40 to 60% discount year over year.
Right.
But for these 18 affected families after July 1st, there's no valid SKU in the Azure catalog to renew into. So what does the system do?
It fails.
But it fails silently. It does not send a hard stop architectural alert. It doesn't block the workload from running. The auto-renew simply errors out in the background. The workload keeps humming along. The reservation discount evaporates instantly, and you are defaulted to pay-as-you-go on-demand rates.
It just drops you to on-demand.
Let's look at the math of that failure. If you have an EV3 cluster with 128 vCPUs, your reserved discounted rate is roughly 50 cents an hour. On demand, that exact same server is $1.01.
If you are running a fleet of 100 of those VMs, your annual cost jumps from $131,000 to $220,000 overnight. That is nearly $90,000 in completely unbudgeted spend.
And the CFO is going to want answers.
Microsoft knows exactly who has auto-renew enabled. They own Azure Cost Management. They have the back-end telemetry. Letting a customer unknowingly absorb a 100% price hike because a UI convenience feature silently failed is a predatory harvesting of locked-in infrastructure.
See, I reject the premise of vendor malice here entirely, because your argument absolves the cloud customer of their basic fiduciary responsibility. Setting an auto-renew toggle on a massive multi-million-dollar financial commitment and then walking away for 3 years is not a cost management strategy.
But they designed it to be used that way.
It is the cloud computing equivalent of leaving a corporate credit card on autopay for a SaaS tool and never once looking at the monthly statements to see if you still use it. Auto-renew was designed for convenience. It was never designed to be a replacement for active governance.
I mean, sure, but
Legacy hardware has to be sunset. DV2 and E3 are showing their age. The newer V5 families offer vastly better performance per dollar. Microsoft cannot maintain infinite physical server racks for deprecated silicon just because customers don't want to update their Terraform scripts.
I am not arguing that hardware shouldn't eventually sunset. I am pointing out the mechanism of the financial trap. If you want to force a hardware migration, you send an aggressive, undeniable notification that explicitly says your auto-renew will fail on this specific date, resulting in an $89,000 increase.
They sent emails.
The notification emails Microsoft actually sent just say, consider migrating to newer series. That is deliberate, profitable ambiguity.
Look at the actual options Microsoft provided. They didn't just pull the rug out from under these fleets. They provided an incredibly robust bridge. A lot of the industry coverage right now is conflating virtual machine retirement with reservation retirement, which is creating unnecessary panic.
How so?
For the heavily used Category 2 families, like the EV3 and DV3, Microsoft is not retiring the physical compute. You can keep running those VMs indefinitely. You just lose the ability to buy a reservation discount for them. And Microsoft offers the Azure Savings Plan as the perfect solution to bridge that gap.
Which is a brilliant way to lock you into their ecosystem without committing to a specific VM family.
Yes, it locks in the spend, but it gives the engineering team massive flexibility. The Savings Plan gives you a commitment-based discount on a flexible hourly spend. It isn't tied to a specific region, and it isn't tied to a specific VM series.
Right, so you're insulated from the series retirement.
Exactly. So, if your engineering team isn't ready to refactor their architecture and migrate those workloads off EV3 by July 1st, you don't have to panic migrate the compute. You just shift the financial commitment from an RI to a savings plan. You don't leave money on the table, and you buy your team the 12 to 18 months they need to plan an actual server migration properly. The tools to survive this cliff are sitting right there in the portal.
They are sitting right there, but only if you see the cliff in time. And that brings us to the most insidious part of this entire Azure scenario, the 2028 trap.
Ah, the 3-year reservation holders?
Yes. Let's walk through the psychology of an infrastructure manager looking at their portal today. Picture a FinOps lead at an enterprise that purchased 3-year reserved instances on EV3 servers in early 2024. Their expiration date isn't until 2027 or even 2028.
They're well covered.
Right now, it's May. They open their dashboard, and everything is green. They feel zero pain. Their auto-renew might even be turned on. They read the news about the July 1st cutoff, and they think, well, that doesn't apply to me. I have 2 years left on my contract.
But the July 1st, 2026 deadline applies to them, too.
It is the absolute cutoff to purchase a successor reservation. If that FinOps manager lets July 1st pass without taking action, they will coast comfortably on their current discount for another year or two. And then, in 2028, they will hit a concrete wall.
Because there's nothing to renew into?
Their RI will expire, and because the July 1st window closed 2 years prior, they will have 0 options to renew. No savings plan transition will save their legacy discount at that point. They will be permanently locked out of the market, forced into on-demand pricing, And the person who made the mistake in 2026 might not even work at the company anymore. It is a delayed fuse financial bomb.
Which is exactly why proactive lifecycle management is mandatory. The FinOps teams managing those 3-year portfolios need to be looking at the 2028 horizon today, not when the term is 90 days from expiring. If you discover a massive cluster of VMs on a retiring family after the July deadline is passed, panic buying on-demand compute is the worst possible outcome for your margin.
Which means there is a very specific, urgent protocol every infrastructure team needs to execute immediately. You must disable auto-renew on all Category 1 and Category 2 reserved instances today. Turn off the false safety net, replace that toggle with a hard calendar reminder and an engineering ticket.
Get human eyes on it.
But most critically, you must explicitly flag all 3-year RI holders with 2027 and 2028 expiries right now. You have to comb through your environment, find them, and lock in a savings plan or execute a mid-term RI exchange to the V5 families before the July 1st window closes permanently.
You cannot let the comfort of a distant expiration date lull you into missing the only intervention window you actually have.
Looking at both of these situations holistically, GitHub Copilot's token overhaul masking actual agentic costs, and Azure's reserved VM retirements leveraging silent UI failures, we are witnessing a profound shift in the cloud billing landscape. We are moving violently away from predictable flat-rate subscriptions and comfortable auto-renewing commitments.
Back to the meter.
We are shifting straight back into aggressive, highly granular consumption models where every single compute cycle and every single token is weaponized against your budget.
Where we completely converge is on the fundamental reality of cloud governance on the ground. Whether you believe the vendor is intentionally pulling the rug out from under you using deceptive timing and UI tricks, or whether you believe these cliffs are harsh but necessary economic realities exposing lazy management, the end result on the balance sheet is exactly the same.
Very true.
Trusting vendor features, whether they are promotional credit buffers masking your true AI burn rate or auto-renew checkboxes hiding your legacy hardware liabilities, is a catastrophic risk to a company's budget.
The automation that vendors provide is designed to optimize their revenue recognition, not your operational budget. The tools they hand you, the build previews, the auto-renews, the promo periods, they are designed to make you feel like you are in control of the airplane. But true FinOps is the discipline of knowing when those tools are blinding you to the actual mechanics of your spend.
Human intervention is no longer optional. You cannot passively manage these platforms anymore. You need to dive into your Azure Cost Management and your GitHub Billing Overview portals today. The raw data is sitting right there, but it will not manage itself. You have to audit your environments, model the real consumption without the promo modifiers, and draw your own conclusions about what these platforms will actually cost your business in Q4.
Do not wait for the dashboard to flash red. Because as we've seen with both Microsoft and GitHub, the autopilot is perfectly content to let you fly straight over the cliff in total silence. Check your instruments, take the controls, and navigate the drop before it's too late.